Jesus said, "Verily I say unto you, no prophet is accepted in his own country. But I tell you of a truth, many widows were in Israel in the days of Elias," that's the Greek word for Elijah, "when the heaven was shut up 3 years and 6 months, when great famine was throughout all the land. But unto none of them was Elias sent, save unto Sarepta, a city of Sidon, unto a woman that was a widow." Now Jesus, amongst many other things, he's confirming here to us that God provides divine appointments. Appointments, not just for the preacher, but for everyone who follows God. Everyone who goes out. You're a little bit of a prophet in whatever circle you're in. And sometimes God sends you to the most unlikely places to witness, because the ones you thought would listen won't. Okay? A prophet's not accepted in his own country. Who is God sending you? Now listen, church, I'm talking to you right now. Who is God sending you personally to today? Our former SBC president, J.D. Greear, he started this evangelistic initiative a few years ago called Who's Your One? And it's been very successful. It is as basic as the Great Commission. You simply ask God to reveal to you one person to consistently pray for their salvation, and to invite them to church, to seek them out, to see that they are saved by God, to simply put the gospel in front of them. It's simple, right? It's simple. I cannot change the world, but I can see the world change one person at a time, right? One person at a time. What do we regularly pray for, though, when we pray? Oh, God, help all the missionaries. Oh, God, help all the church. Oh, God, save all the lost. Well, that's a fine and nice prayer. At least you're praying something, all right? But let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Let's think of somebody in the real time we need to be speaking to. Amen. Who is your one? Who's that one that God put you in their circle that you can share the gospel with them? We've been studying over the prophet Elijah for some time now. And God sent him to Israel's king Ahab to let him know his wickedness in leading the people of Israel into idolatry and sin had been recognized in heaven. And now it was not going to rain again until the prophet said that it was going to rain. And that's what he told him. Elijah went down to the brook and he stayed down there for a while until all this took place. And there was this famine in the land because the brook dried up. And the idea of the rain and the brook drying up, to us today, we don't think much of it. I mean, there's people today who think that if you want milk, you go down to Walmart. Well, milk actually comes from a cow. Imagine that. I mean, they think that way today. Back at our forefathers long ago, they knew if the environment was to change and they were not able to grow their food and they weren't able to have water, there'd be a danger in that. If it didn't rain, they would all die because the food could not grow. God was showing them that He was more powerful than the God that Jezebel, who was King Ahab's wife, had introduced to the people. See, Jezebel was a wicked woman, and she wanted to turn the people of God towards this Baal worship. And let me tell you a little bit what Baal worship entails. You get fertile crops, but you have to go down to the temple of Baal. You have to go see the temple prostitutes of Baal. You have to do things with the temple prostitutes that you're only supposed to do with your husband and your wife, right? And when they have a child, that temple prostitute, they take that child out and they would murder it in a sacrifice to Baal. Can I tell you who Baal really was? Baal was the devil, all right? Paul said all of the false worship out here, it's all directed to the demons, all right? And this one, I think without a doubt, there's no doubt that was directed to the demons. But in this environment, God revealed to Elijah who his one would be. You know, he'd been waiting for a while by that brook, hadn't he? He'd been there for a long time. And God, after prayer and all this, He tells him who his one is going to be. Who's he going to start out this evangelistic endeavor, this desire to see the people of God come back to God. And it's the last person in the world anybody would have thought. Can I tell you that? Isn't that how God is? He sends us to the last person we would have imagined. And the word of the Lord came unto him, Elijah, saying, Arise, get thee to Zarephath, which belongeth to Zidon, and dwell there. Behold, I've commanded a widow woman there to sustain thee. Now this widow woman, she lived in Phoenicia. And we don't know that off of a casual reading, but if you study at it, you understand Phoenicia is the hometown of Jezebel. And it's the center for Baal worship. So God is literally sending Elijah not to the people of God in his own country, right? He's not sending them there to bring them all back to God. Where did he tell him to go? He told him to go to the enemy camp. It's like saying, here I am, kill me, all right? He's going down into this area after he has stood up against Jezebel. Now, here's what we need to understand from that recognition. Not everyone in the enemy camp is the enemy, okay? This is where we get our mindset most of the time. Someone who is for abortion isn't your enemy, all right? You know who they are? They're the mission field. They're the one you need to be praying for. They're the one you need to be seeking out and showing them the love of Christ and the truth of Christ, right? They're not the enemy. They're bound by the devil, aren't they? Right? Were those Baal worshipers bound by the devil? Absolutely. Absolutely. But are they people created in the image of God? Yes. Yes. And we see that, and we see how wicked and evil that is, right? But that's a human being just as well, right? Somebody that needs Jesus Christ. You know what could happen to that person if they were changed by the gospel of Jesus Christ? Someone involved in homosexuality. They aren't the enemy, okay? These people standing outside campaigning around wanting homosexuality rampant throughout the culture and all these things. Oh, we don't want that, don't get me wrong. We don't want that in society. We understand that is wrong. But do you understand that that's a soul for which Jesus Christ died? You need to go to them, lovingly present to them the truth of the gospel of Jesus Christ, that He came and died for them just as well as He did for you. Is that your person? Is that your one this morning? One of my sons sent me a YouTube video or a review of the movie God's Not Dead a while back. Anybody ever see that movie, God's Not Dead? You ever seen that? It's a story of a professor who is just this cruel, mean man. And he tears apart this boy, this student in school. And for the most part, this guy, he's portrayed as this monster throughout it. And the boy comes against him. And eventually he converts, but only after he's hit by a car, flipped in the air, and thrown to the ground, right? At the end of the movie. And I like the movie, don't get me wrong. But the guy in the review, he showed how this lost person was demonized. He was almost made like he had no humanity whatsoever. There was no good points ever shown about the atheist throughout the movie. Do you know wicked people have good points about them? Sometimes wicked people do good things. What we do, church, I think, is we want to demonize the lost. And therefore, we never reach anybody for Jesus Christ, right? If you're constantly looking at people and you're turning them, not seeing anything good in them whatsoever, and not sharing any kind of love toward them whatsoever, how in the world do you ever expect anybody to hear you about Jesus Christ, right? Jesus went and ate with sinners. The Pharisees didn't like that. Here's a point. You don't want to be like the Pharisees. Amen. All right? You don't want to be like them. They're on the outside looking in this morning. All right? They're on the outside looking in. The true follower of Christ will try to reach those people. Right? Right? Or am I wrong? Yeah, I'm right. I think I'm right. I think I'm right because this says it. Amen. All right? I'm right because this says it. We don't want to demonize the lost. God has placed certain wicked people in your circle, and you need to reach out to them for Jesus. God's already prepared them for you. Can I tell you that? So he arose. He did what God told him. He went to Zarephath, and when he came to the gate of the city, behold, the widow woman was there gathering of sticks. And he called to her and said, Fetch me, I pray thee, a little water in a vessel, that I may drink. And she was going to fetch it. She was going to fetch it. He called to her and said, Bring me, I pray thee, a morsel of bread in thine hand. And she said, As the Lord thy God liveth, I have not a cake, but a handful of meal in a barrel, and a little oil in a cruse. And behold, I am gathering 2 sticks, that I may go in and dress it for me and my son, that we may eat it and die. This woman's on the edge of poverty. And Elijah said unto her, Fear not, go and do as thou hast said, but make me thereof a little cake first. Bring it unto me, and after make for thee and thy son. For thus saith the Lord God of Israel, The barrel of meal shall not waste, neither shall the cruse of oil fail, until the day that the Lord sendeth rain upon the earth. Now, I don't know if you missed it while I was reading that, but right there, and I think it was verse 11, it says, She looked at him and said, As the Lord thy God liveth. Didn't she? Notice something. She knew about the God of Elijah, didn't she? Everybody knows about the God of Elijah, okay? Everybody knows. You say, but there's all these atheists out. Oh, they know. There wouldn't be any atheists if they wasn't somebody to say there wasn't a God. Everybody knows there's a God, okay? There is a God out there. Just looking at the creation around you reveals it is designed in such a way that it is intricate, right? There's not chaos out. Somebody ordered all that together, didn't they? Amen. You know, we create amazing robotics and all these things, but look about the amazement of your eyes and your hands and your body. I mean, someone designed this, okay? And if that ain't enough, look inside of you. Why do you feel like there's anything that's evil or wrong when I mention it? Why is there any evil or wrong at all? We each have a conscience inside of us, right? Yeah. You know, my dog doesn't care if it's wrong to go into a certain place to go get a bit of dog food, okay? My dog doesn't have a conscience about a lot of things, okay? Well, I love my little dog, don't get me wrong. I love my little poodle. But it doesn't care about a conscience in that way. But we, right? We have that, don't we? We have this sense, this moral sensitivity. Everybody has a little knowledge of God. If you ever have an opportunity, not right now, go over to Acts 17. Paul walked in this place that was a completely pagan place. And he walked around and he saw all these different idols all around him. And he was going up on to see the philosophers on Mars Hill there. And as he walked up, he noticed this idol off to the side. It said it was to the unknown God, right? And when he walked up there to talk to those philosophers who knew nothing of the God of the Hebrews or the Jews or any of that, he looked at me and said, I want to make you known of that unknown God that you're trying to remember. Because they threw him in there because they had all these other gods. They didn't want to miss anybody, okay? There's one that's unknown to them. Paul then mentioned to them what? What was the thing Paul mentioned to people? That God made everything. Right? Is that not what I told you? Does not everybody know that? Everybody knows that. A lot of people try to deny that. A lot of people try to say that a monkey turned into a man, right? Oh, it's not a monkey. It's a kind of being like a monkey. Okay. What? That dinosaurs, they turn into birds. I mean, you want to talk fantasy, folks. Let's go to Fantasy Island and open up some of these biology books today, okay? In the first few pages. That's what they say. Dinosaurs turned into birds. All right? That's the idea. But here's the facts, folks. Everybody can see that there's a creation out here. Therefore, there is a creator. You know what Paul did next? Paul then mentioned that he began to speak on that inward understanding that every one of us knows there's a judgment day coming. What was he speaking to? That you have a conscience. My goodness, there's not been much change over 2,000 years about explaining what there's a God, right? He did the very same thing, didn't he? See, you're one. The one that you're thinking of here this morning, they're in that same situation. They may deny there's a God. They may not care there's a God, but they know there's a God down deep. They know down deep that there's a judgment day coming. They know in their conscience that there are things they have done wrong, and surely there's going to be some kind of judgment for what they've done. They know that, don't they? Don't they? Did you know that? Yeah? Yeah, you knew that. They know it too, no matter how much they want to deny it. And you're ones in that situation. Don't be afraid to remind him or her about what they already know. All right? And then encourage them. Encourage them to try to have some faith. Look what it says here in verse 15. And she went and did according to the saying of Elijah. And she and he and her house did eat many days. And the barrel of meal wasted not, neither did the cruse of oil fail, according to the word of the Lord, which he spake by Elijah. Now, a little bit of faith can grow, can it? Right? He said, just trust me. Make that little cake for me, and God will provide. And she jumped on that, didn't she? Jesus said, faith as small as a grain of mustard seed can move a mountain. Do you believe that? Do you have faith like that? Just a little bit of faith is the point. Just a little bit. Encourage one to try. It could move the mountain of their unbelief. Does your one ever ask you to pray for their family? I mentioned that most people will, okay? If they know you're a Christian and you're in their workplace, they're going to come up to you some point in time and say, will you pray for this? Will you pray for that? Don't be ashamed to point out when those prayers are answered, okay? Show them that the faith has actually occurred. Don't be afraid to speak of God. Don't be afraid to show that what faith produces. Did your one know you before salvation occurred in your life? Did they know you before that time? Now here's a key point to this. You might not want to use this if you ain't changed much. Okay? But point out the miracle of your changed life. Don't be ashamed. Say, God had me this way. Now can't you see I'm different than I was before?
Amen.
There was a skilled atheist orator. He come upon this little mining town in the 1850s, and he decided to host a speech in the town square to show all those hicks that God wasn't real. Kind of like the preachers do when they go around evangelizing. So the atheist set all these things up, and he gathered the crowd together, and he began to speak eloquently about all these things. And at the end, he concluded that Jesus simply was a myth, like that. And one of the old miners back in the back, he kind of looked up, and him not knowing what myth even meant, right? He looked up and he said, "Sir, I'm only a working man. Now, I don't know what you mean by the word myth, but can you explain me?" That's a question to ask, isn't it? Can you explain me? 3 years ago, I had a miserable home. I neglected my wife and children. I cursed. I swore. I drank up all my wages. Then someone came along and showed me the love of God and of His Son, Jesus Christ. And now all is different. We have a happy home. I love my wife and children. I feel better in every way. And I've given up the drink. A new power has taken possession of me since Christ came into my life. Sir, and his face was all aglow when he said it again, "Can you explain me?" The atheist admitted that he could not. But here's the thing. Can you explain yourself to someone else? Will someone see Jesus in you and that be enough to draw them to Christ? That there's a difference in who you are? Just try having a little faith, my friend. But here's the key. Here's the key. When you live for Christ and that person is close, you better expect opposition to run up, right?
Amen.
Does the devil want to let go of his prey? Does a lion want to be pulled off of the animal that it's eating? No, it does not. And that's what happens here next to Elijah. "And it came to pass after these things that the son of the woman, the mistress of the house, fell sick. And his sickness was so sore that there was no breath left in him." I read that this week and I thought to myself, think about all the sickness out here right now. Right? And she said unto Elijah, "What have I to do with thee, O thou man of God? Art thou coming to me to call my sin to remembrance and to slay my son?" Those words must have hurt Elijah, didn't they? You think they did? Elijah had done nothing to this woman. As far as I can tell, he wasn't pointing out any sin to her, at least from what the text tells us, right? It was just being in his presence that made her feel sinful, right? That enemy doesn't want to let go of his prey, but don't let that stop you. It's a spiritual battle, my friend. Don't expect that you're sitting back here drinking your iced tea and everything's going to be good once you come to Jesus, all right? Sometimes things get a little harder. Sometimes the word coming out of your one's mouth might have been placed there by the enemy to get you to stop having compassion for them. Did you ever think of that? Did you ever think of that? You've got to make the decision. Is your one worth it? Are they worth it?
Amen.
Jesus came to the disciples and they had a problem. They couldn't cast a demon out of this young child. The demon kept throwing the child down into the fire and burning the child. The parent didn't know what to do. The disciples, they said, well, you gave us the power to cast him out, and he doesn't come out. I don't know what to do, Jesus, right? Jesus come along. He said, this is basically Scott's interpretation. I can hear Jesus doing that in this. And he cast the demon out. And the disciples come and said, why? Why couldn't we cast him out? And Jesus looked at him. He said, this kind goeth not out, but by prayer and fasting. Now, if you get some of these other Bibles today, you'll just hear prayer, but that's not the truth. It's prayer and fasting is what Jesus said. What does that tell you? There's a struggle.
Right.
There's a struggle. Does that person cause you not to have to eat because you're so concerned over them? Huh? Does your one cause you to get so concerned that you're not wanting to eat? That you're down on your face praying for them, saying, God, please be merciful to them. Give them one more moment. Is it concerning? Because I think a lot of times we think, I prayed for all the lost, and that was it. Oh yes, that is not the kind of Christianity that's in the Bible. They get down on their hands and knees and their faces. They pray for 40 days at a time, and they're asking God, please. They're so concerned over it, they're losing their appetite. They're fasting. Folks, do you care? Are you willing to go through the struggle for your one? This is a battle for their life. And that's the point. It's a battle for their life. Look here at verse 19. He said unto her, give me thy son. And he took him out of her bosom and carried him up into a loft where he abode and laid him upon his own bed. And he cried unto the Lord and said, Lord my God, hast thou also brought evil upon the widow with whom I sojourn by slaying her son? And he stretched himself upon the child 3 times and cried unto the Lord and said, O Lord my God, I pray thee, let this child's soul come unto him again. And the Lord heard the voice of Elijah, and the soul of the child came into him again, and he revived. Amen. We all have a great enemy, don't we? Your one has it as well as you do. It's death, isn't it? It's coming for every one of us. Death is always looming in the background. We attempt to hide it here in America. There was a time when people would bring the dead bodies into their houses and stay up with them all night, right? Now what do? They put them inside this little area. They don't bring them out by a certain time. They open the little lid and they look like they're asleep. You close it back up. And there's a whole lot of dealing with that death. Nowadays, they don't even do that. They just go aside from the whole receiving of friends and funeral and everything and just put them in the ground, get them out of my sight. I don't want to be reminded. Death is coming, right? Amen. Let's get this over with as soon as possible. But folks, death is real. Death is coming. Death is coming. And there's only one way to escape it, and only one. And that's by having real life. You're in death right now if you don't have Jesus, okay? You're in death right now. The lie of the devil is that you're living, well, you're actually in the death of this world. This world is death. When God wanted to show the world where real life was found, what did He do? He showed the world an empty tomb, didn't He? Life arising from the dead. Matter of fact, that's how you get saved. The scripture says this, that if thou shalt confess with thy mouth the Lord Jesus, that's that Jesus is God, Lord Jehovah, He is God, and shalt believe in thine heart, what? That God hath raised Him from the dead, thou shalt be saved. Not if you've been baptized, not if you've been catechized, not if you've been done any other way. If you'll believe that life is in Jesus Christ, thou shalt be saved, and confess Him with your mouth, right? Salvation revolves around your admission that Christ is alive and that death doesn't reign in your mortal body anymore, right? Folks, I tell you what, that is the point. This is where we are pointing. Our 1-2 is what it says here in verse 23. And Elijah took the child and brought him down out of the chamber in the house and delivered him into his mother. And Elijah said, See, thy son liveth. Haven't we told them, see, the son liveth? Right? Amen. And the woman said to Elijah, Now by this I know that thou art a man of God, and that the word of the Lord in thy mouth is truth. This is the point you're praying for your one, to experience salvation, to trust in the truth, to actually receive that truth and accept it. And it never says she confesses this out as her Lord, but that's my hope. What happened to this old widow, okay? That's my hope. The word of the Lord is true, she said. Have you ever led somebody to Jesus? Any of you? You ever led somebody to Jesus? That's all you can do is lead them there. All right? You just lead them there. You can't save them, can you? You can't make them do it. You lead them to Jesus, and that's as far as you can go. And from then on, they've got to find the rest of the way. I quit trying to lead people through a prayer a long time ago. You know that? Because how can I lead somebody on how they're supposed to apologize to their family member, or how they're supposed to say I'm sorry for what they've done? How can I put in the words into their mouth about what they should say to their God about how to be saved, right? They've just got to confess Him as Lord, right? And that's what I can lead them to that, but I can lead them to water, but I can't make them drink, can I? I can lead them all the way there, but I can't do that. But when they do, when they confess Him, there's no greater feeling in your heart to know what's happened. Something has happened there of eternal significance. In Luke 15, 8 through 10, there's a woman that Jesus tells a story about who had 10 pieces of silver. And it said if she lost one piece, she lights a candle, she sweeps the whole house, she seeks diligently till she finds that one little piece. And when she finds it, she calls all her friends around and they have a celebration, right? Because that one piece is found. And Jesus says, salvation's a lot like that when somebody repents. He says that there's joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner that repenteth. You hear what I said? Not over a church full that repenteth. Not over a nation that repenteth. Not over a family that repenteth. But what over, church? Over one that repenteth. Amen. Who's your one? Who's your one? Right? Who's the one that you're going to commit to this morning to see one for Jesus Christ? Who's that one? Or maybe you're the one this morning and you need to receive Him right here. This is the day of salvation. This is the day of preparation for another salvation. What will you do with what I've told you here today? I hope you're enjoying the sermons here and have subscribed to my channel on YouTube. But I would love even more to meet with you in person at the church where I'm blessed to pastor at in White Pine, Tennessee, Omega Baptist Church.